As part of the 70th anniversary celebrations of KNUST, Life School presents a special series with KNUST alumni to learn from their life experiences and share their special fun moments from Tech Campus. Join us to share our fun moments and learn from each other. Life School, sharing skills and lessons for life.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Live School series, and I am your host, Nsarkoh. Today, we have with us here Mr. Nsarkoh. So, sir, nice to have you here. It's our pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. So, we would like to kickstart with getting to know you better. So, could you tell us about yourself, your personality, because we'll get to acquaint ourselves better with you.
Okay, thank you very much for that question. It's always a bit difficult to describe your personality, but I can give you some facts about myself.
Okay.
So I was born to two academics in 1968. I'm the first of Joanna Nsarkoh's children with Prof. Nsarkoh, who have both passed on now. I therefore grew up on the University of Ghana campus in Legon because both of them were academics and worked there. So that's essentially where I grew up. I went inevitably to the primary school over there, University Primary School. And then I went to Achimota School, which was essentially part of the Legon campus, so close to home. And after Achimota, wanting to study engineering, I moved to what we then called Tech, UST, what is today called KNUST. It was actually in the 88-89 academic year, but there were delays in our entry because of disruptions to the calendar year. So we entered in the 1989 calendar year, although it was the 88-89. And given that engineering was a 4-year course, I was there for four years and left in 1992. I was in the famous Katanga Hall.
Oh, okay. Katangi, proud one.
Very, very proud Katangi. I'm a very proud Katangi. Actually, the locus of most of my experience in tech was Katanga Hall. Apart from going for lectures, and then in the evenings, I would go with my roommate, Johnny Akoto, who was also studying chemical engineering and who was my friend from Achimota and therefore I had known for a very long time. We would normally go to the Queen's Hall JCR to have dinner. So apart from going for lectures and going to eat in Queen's Hall, most of my time was spent in Katanga.
Oh,
so that's who I am.
It would break your heart to find out that it is now a mixed hall.
Well, not necessarily. I left Katanga 30 years ago. I'm sufficiently flexible in my mind to realize that things don't stay static. Yeah. So I know that there were strong sentiments. Some of my colleagues felt very strongly about it. My perspective always remained that the people who are to administer the university, they know best, and therefore they make the right decisions for the hall and for the school, for the university at large. So the outcomes will show. If the whole of the university turns out to be better because Katanga is mixed, I can live with it.
Yeah. I think that is it's an open-minded perspective from the way you are looking at it. Yeah. So now, moving away from the whole I grew up on Legon campus, we would want to get to know you a bit more personally. So we would want you to tell us something that people in your inner circle know about you, like one distinctive thing that is known about you in your inner circles.
Well, I'm a fairly private person, especially when I don't know people too well. I am fairly private, and people tend to say I'm quiet. When they get to know me well, realize that I do speak quite a bit. I can be quite a chatterbox. I'm not as private as people seem to think I am, but I just need time to get to know people better before I take off. a distinctive thing people know about me, I'm actually struggling to say, because in that regard, I don't live multiple personalities. Where when you see me, what you see is what you see, and that is that. So I don't know that there are things in my private. There perhaps people very close to me will say I like having fun and making fun of people and laughing a lot. I think that is one thing people will say, that he's always looking for a way to laugh about something. And I don't think just in my private circles, people who know me generally will also say that I do have strong views about many things. And I don't shy away from expressing those views on things that I feel strongly about.
So, now we know you've spent most of your life in university campuses, looking at the fact that you were literally raised on University of Ghana campus, transitioned to KNUST later on. What are some of the life lessons that you have learned outside of school?
Outside of school, so my experiences, because the circle of friends I belonged to when I was in university kept always reminding ourselves that there was the campus life, but there was also the real life that we would move into, which would be less regulated and regimented. And we needed psychologically to prepare ourselves for it. So for me, it was not too much of a shock. I know for some people, when they come out of school, what confronts them surprises them a lot. But given that we had been talking about it, exploring it, etc., I was prepared for a little bit of struggle. Out of school, I suppose the main lesson that I have learned is that pick a few things that are important and focus on them. Nobody can pick them for you. We are all different people, so we all have our priorities. But what is very true is that you can't do everything. And therefore, you need to try and come to terms quickly with the things that are important to you, and then stay committed to pursuing them. That would be a general principle that I have come to live with after school.
Okay. Thank you for that. But I would like to know, because you mentioned earlier that you had psyched yourself and prepared yourself, probably mentally, if I may ask, before coming out of school. How did you come to terms with that there would be struggles? What's kept you going at that point when you were out of school?
When I said that I had psyched myself, what I should actually have said, to be more specific and particular, is that I had spoken to quite a few people who had graduated and started their careers. And I was trying to learn from their experiences. What were their surprises? What, on the other hand, did not surprise them? How did they cope with some of the challenges? How did they pursue the opportunities? And with each generation that passed out and started their career, we were learning new things from them. And some of them were transmitting the reality exactly as they experienced it and as they saw it. There were no automatic rights to jobs when you left the university. There was no guarantee that from one year you move to the next and life would just continue. There were new challenges that young people face, looking for accommodation, trying to settle down into a family life, all those sorts of conversations we were having then. I cannot say that I constructed them artificially in my mind exactly as it panned out, but by having those conversations and linking up and opening up myself for the lessons that others were experiencing, it made me a bit better prepared for what was awaiting me after school.
Do you believe that there are some distinctive behaviors and mindsets that could actually guide you towards achieving success in your career? And if so, what could be some of them?
I cannot claim to give you an exhaustive list, but I do believe that there are some distinctive characteristics and there are some things that you need in life in order to be able to progress depending on the path that you choose for yourself. I ended up a bit accidentally in the corporate world, and that's where I have navigated my career right from leaving school. It was not necessarily how I had planned it, but the opportunities that became available for me meant that one after the other, that's what it became. And for 30 years, I have been in the corporate life. Therefore, some of the things that I talk about in terms of what you need to succeed, they come from my corporate background. There may be certain considerations that I leave out because those careers I have not necessarily pursued, and I feel that I need to qualify it. So one is a sense of curiosity about the world, about what is around you, a degree of flexibility, because facts are very important in life. And so whenever you confront facts, if they contradict long-held views, you should respect the facts rather than the dogma or received wisdom, because it's the facts that tell you what it is. Having said that, when you've examined the facts and done the proper analysis, you should be able to take a point of view and form some convictions. And from that point of view, construct a path for how you want to go forward. I think it's also important that we learn to form networks, interact with people, because no man or woman is an island to him or herself. And in that regard, I'm very thankful for the experiences that I got in Katanga Hall in particular, because it was a very high solidarity society. We socialized a lot. We spent a lot of time at the Porter's Lodge in arguments, in debates, many times discussing things that had nothing to do with your own course. But by so doing, you learned so many things. You learned how to put your point of view across. You also learned how to persuade people. You learned how to receive new learning from other people. And above all, you learned that you did not know it all. There were many things that you held as views that could easily be contradicted by other people because they had facts and experiences you did not have. I did become editor-in-chief. I haven't spoken much about that. I became editor-in-chief of Katanga Hall. I've always liked to write and to put my views down. In those days on paper, when we were on campus, we actually wrote in longhand and put them up on the notice boards. That's how it was done at the time. Obviously, with the proliferation of computers and social media, there's a different reality out there. But that was also one active part that I played in Katanga. So what seemed like us just socializing and just spending time chatting, etc., for me has served me well throughout life going forward. When you then progress to the phase where you become a family person, the only thing I would like to add is that as much as we can, we should choose carefully and wisely. At the end of the day, it is in God's hands and your hands what will work out. But a supportive spouse is very important in life. Many times, that's all that you have to hang on. So a supportive spouse is very, very important. And definitely for those who are investing now and coming out, that is one wish I'd have for all of them.
Okay. So it seems it's been established, it doesn't seem. You have strong attachments to your hall, Katanga. What were some of your fondest memories while you were on campus?
Well, you are very right that I have very, very strong attachments to Katanga. I'm a very proud Katangi. Never been apologetic about that. And we've always made sure that is well known. Actually, for many years, I got into trouble with my secondary school colleagues because the only sticker on my class windscreen was Katanga. They used to wonder why not the school and so on, but that is another story. The main thing I really liked about Katanga is that people could be original. It was a very egalitarian society. Nobody cared which home you came from, who your parents were. Nobody cared about that. What you represented yourself and as an individual was what carried you forward in Katanga. And to this day, many of the people that I got to know in Katanga and so on, to this day, I have never really known too much about their parents' backgrounds, where they come from in the country, whether they're Christian or Muslim. It never really mattered. In Katanga, we were all one. And that's how we move forward. And that spirit continues so many years after we left. It continues to hold us together. After so many years, when we come together, the solidarity just flows.
On campus, it seems you had quite a vibrant social life with your friends inside and perhaps maybe outside Katanga. How were you finding the balance between academics and your social life?
So I wouldn't say for many of the people who were my mates on campus, I wouldn't say I had a vibrant social life. I was active within the Katanga space.
Oh, okay.
But there were many things that went on in the school that were not of particular interest to me, which surprised quite a few people. So I did spend a lot of time in Katanga, but you wouldn't find me very active in many of the things that went on in school. Katanga was more or less my world, and that's where I stayed. However, you do keep in mind why you went to the university in the first place. We were there in an interesting phase. It was the last years of military rule in Ghana. So obviously, we were also quite activist in looking for ways to broaden democratic space in the country. Actually, the year in which I left the university is also the year in which Ghana adopted the Fourth Republican Constitution. So you can tell that as students, therefore, those were very interesting times. So we made time for those things, but you also remembered what you were in the university for in the first place and tried also to make time. Were we successful? Not always. I think sometimes we got the balance wrong, but at the end of the day, we are where we are. So we take it from there.
Yeah. You mentioned about having a supportive spouse earlier and how important it is to grow. On campus, were you dating anybody or the 4 years, it was 4-0?
Interestingly, I was too shy and too quiet to get involved in dating, etc. As I said to you, my world was mainly in the Katanga world, and that's basically where I stayed and lived my life. So I would say just in the final year, really, was when I started to reach out and talk to people out of the Katanga space, etc., etc. So maybe I'll say 3.5-0, not quite 4-0, but 3.5.
All right. With the 70th anniversary coming up, there are quite a number of activities lined up. What particular ones are you keenly interested in and waiting for?
So I wouldn't say any specific events, but a thing that crosses my mind a lot when I think about the Ghanaian youth and the Ghanaian space and the Ghanaian democratic journey is very much that we encourage original and diverse thinking about our opportunities and problems. I do feel that we have evolved into a space where we are accepting other people's orthodoxies without questioning them anymore. And for me, the real intellectual is the one that asks original questions. Why? Why is this suitable for me? Why is this the way that we need to go? Should I go this way simply because other people have gone that way? Because our country has its unique opportunities and challenges. And some of the models that we just take and run with are being applied in societies that are much more developed and advanced than ours, but who at the time they were in our phase of development needed to see things a little bit differently. So all the activities that are planned for the 70th anniversary that encourage original thinking, that encourage people to express diverse views, that encourage the young of the world to be heard their own voices and not just treated as people who should be seen but not be heard. All of them I am exceedingly supportive of.
Were you a sports person back in school? Because I know there's the Tech Olympics, that is how they dubbed it. It's a race, and we would be looking forward to seeing you compete.
I did have a lot of interest in football, but I was not particularly exceptional at it. However, I was part of always the Katanga group that was cheering the team on and so on. Interestingly, after school, after university, I played active football for many, many years with a group of us who were from Katanga, but also a group who had come from Commonwealth. And when we graduated, we came together and formed a group called the Union. So we played football for several years, I think close to a decade. But then we started to travel, etc. So I could not be active in that group anymore. But the group, even now, still comes together to play. So I would say, yes, I was a sportsman. Did I practice sports at a very high level in the university? No, I didn't.
There has been a fund that has been set up, the alumni, yeah, the Endowment Fund. So I was wondering if you could kindly send out a word to alumni worldwide so that they could all come around to support this Endowment Fund.
No, definitely. I reach out to all my colleagues. I think we call ourselves technocrats, those of us who went to tech. It's a time of great distress in our country for public institutions. And therefore, whatever help we can all give to prop up the institution that produced us, so it can also be known and regarded for world-class standards that it has illustrated in times past. This is the time for us to do it. From our various vantage points, this is the opportunity for us to give back. And I'll encourage you all to participate in whatever way you can.
It's been wonderful talking to you, but I would like you to give out one advice, specific advice to young ones who would come to you for guidance in terms of career.
Advice is always a heavy word. So I will say I have a few thoughts that I share, but you limited me to one, so let me stay.
Oh, you can give as many as you can.
It's always good to focus, so let me just stick to the main thing that I would like to say, and if I was doing it all over again, that I would really keep in mind is that you should be courageous. Do not be afraid of making mistakes. No mistake is going to kill you. So experiment, be courageous. Don't just take things at face value and say someone told you, so that is what it is. Examine the facts for yourself and reach your own conclusions. You have every right, just as anybody else, to contribute originally to knowledge. And that whatever you do, however careful you try to be, you will make some mistakes. And it's part of the growth journey. Everybody you see before you, who you hold as a role model or mentor, has made many mistakes. And that's how they have got to where they are. So do not let the fear of failure paralyze you. Go out there, live your life, explore, do things, grow, learn very much from your mistakes, but also share the experiences of your mistakes with those who come after you.
Thank you, sir. Could you please tell us about your family?
So I'm married to Elizabeth. That's Elizabeth Nsarkoh, as you would expect. She studied in the University of Ghana in Legon, so she wasn't in tech. We met after school. She has a first degree in sociology and an MBA in finance. Spends much of her time now in the space of mental health, helping people with coaching and counseling, but also is a very, very keen art collector and helps people to sort out their supply chains in that area. So when I talk about a supportive spouse, she to me is a real example of one. We have two sons, 20 and 17. The 20-year-old is studying law in the University of East Anglia in Norwich, and the younger one is in Upper Six in Lancing College in West Sussex. The names, if you want to know that, the older one is Kweku Nsarkoh, the younger one is Kwame Nsarkoh.
You mentioned your wife is a mental health activist. Do you feel our society or our university campuses downplay the role of mental health?
I don't know whether I will say downplay, but I will say that the awareness in our society is low. And unfortunately, mental health conversations are still very stigmatized in our society. So it's very difficult for people to come out and be open about it. But mental health is like all other kinds of health. And the incidents of mental health breakdowns are all over us. So whichever way and whatever we can do to improve awareness, to educate people to know how to take care of their mental health properly, because there are good and bad practices in that regard, and to destigmatize the space, we all have to do it. And if that involves that the subject must be taught in all courses in the university, then that is what we must do. This is a very urgent issue. If you come to Europe, where I'm based now, even they are still talking about the need to create more awareness and to educate people more about it. And yet they are streets ahead of us in that regard. In many European businesses now, when you go, there are so many sessions and seminars, etc., teaching people from top of the organization right down to the bottom of the organization, the person who just entered yesterday, on how to manage their mental health, encouraging people to share the symptoms, encouraging people on how to look for symptoms in other people, and so on. And therefore, I see a significant advance in that regard. Yet, you talk to the average person in that area, occupational health people, even in Europe, and they'll tell you there's a very long way to go. So there's an even longer way for us, and whatever we can do to encourage it, we should. It's not just up to the universities. The universities definitely do have a role to play, but so do the primary schools, the secondary schools, the churches, the mosques, all the societies that we belong in. Everybody must chip in this regard and bring the urgency that is required to it, because it's a very important subject.
Thank you. There was something I wanted to ask earlier. How were you able to transition to jobs to get to where you are? Where did you do your service? After service, where did you proceed to? Could you kindly guide us through your career path?
Okay. So depending on your perspective, I've been either very fortunate or very unfortunate. I leave it to everybody to form their own perspective. But I've only worked with one employer since I left school, which is Unilever.
Oh,
and I would like to give a very nice story about how I had planned it, and that's where I wanted to go as a chemical engineer and what have you. But the truth is that I went to the National Service Secretariat. I had been posted to the Lever Brothers factory in Tema. And I went there for a year, worked in the quality assurance laboratory under other people who had been in tech, Pamela Texan. She was actually Pamela Wood when she was in tech, also a chemical engineer, was my first boss. So she took me and mentored me and helped me, also a chemical engineer, to start to try and build a professional base. And I stayed in Unilever throughout. But within Unilever, I have done many jobs and moved countries a lot. I started, as I've said to you, in the quality assurance laboratory as a young chemical engineer. Then I moved into manufacturing. where we're running the foods factory. I started as a shift manager, so I was working all sorts of odd hours, responsible for managing a crew. Did that for a while. Then I did become a production manager in the food side of the business. So started to look after the factory, gained some manufacturing experience. And I made a strange career switch for the times. Maybe today it's more common, I don't know. But I moved from manufacturing engineering into brand marketing after about 5.5 years after school, which didn't really have much to do with what I had formerly studied in school when I was in the university. But from brand marketing, I then prosecuted what became my national career. I stayed there for a period of time in brand marketing. Then I moved to Durban, South Africa, to work still with Unilever in marketing. Came back for a short period of time to become the marketing director of Unilever, and then moved from there to one of the best and most enjoyable roles that I have done, which was to work as the strategic assistant for the Unilever president for Asia, Africa, Middle East, Turkey, Central and Eastern Europe. So it gave me an opportunity to see how the organization was run at the very top, because he was more or less the number two in the organization at the time. From there, I then moved to run what was then called the East and Southern African part of Unilever. So it included a cluster of countries that fall into East and Southern Africa, but that did not include South Africa. South Africa was a business by itself. It was too big and large to be folded into my bit. I was based in Nairobi, Kenya, but some of the countries that I then got to be familiar with, which I didn't know before, were countries like Uganda, Tanzania, Mozambique, Rwanda, Malawi, Zimbabwe. Zambia was part of my responsibility, but my father had worked in Zambia before and we used to go there for holidays. So I did know Zambia a little bit, even though I needed to refresh my mind about it. So we had a good time as a family in Kenya. Actually, it was the longest stretch of stability that my young children at the time, and I'll send you some pictures of them when they were young as well in Kenya. It was the longest stretch because they were there for almost 6 years. So that's where they did a lot of their primary school education. So from Kenya, we then moved to Nigeria, where we were for close to 6 years again. But at the time, the children were shuttling because they started to school in London. Nigeria was a very interesting experience, a whole new world, even though it's so close to Ghana and we have so many cultural similarities. One also still learned so many things, the dynamics of the society, the aggression, the entrepreneurial drive, so many things that we learned from there. So after the period in Nigeria, we then moved back to London, where I am right now, and contemplating what my options will be going forward. I'm now getting to the close of my corporate career, so beginning to think about what else I want to do.
So, moving around, traveling different countries, what sort of cultural shocks did you experience? And also, what other cultural differences did you find that you feel we could incorporate into our Ghanaian society?
I did learn a lot, and wherever I have lived, some people say I do it actually too much, but wherever I have lived, I try very much to study what people are doing better than us and what we can learn from them. So traveling the world has really shaped my worldview about many things and causes me also to ask original questions about some of the things that we just assume are the way that they should be. And I'll just share a few experiences. Kenya was a big eye-opener. I didn't have much experience. I had been to Nairobi, But I now believe that when you haven't really lived in a place, you don't really know it. You visit a place, you stay in hotels, and you come to think that you really know it. But if you want to know the people, you have to stay there for some time, travel the country, talk to people, etc. I was the service industry in Kenya, which you know is a major tourist country. So if I compare the service industry, the level of professionalism in it to what we have in Ghana, there's a huge gap. And there are very many things in that way that we can learn from the people of Kenya. It's a beautiful country, very green. They have kept their vegetation spaces well. They've been able to keep their fauna also well, and therefore people travel from all over the world to come and see it. And so that, I would say, while we were in Kenya, that was one of the many things. They also have a lot of good facilities for training children in music. And my children were quite musical. So it was a good place to live for them to grow in that regard. I've already said a few things about Nigeria and the drive and the enterprise, but also some of the challenges that you see at real hand, some of the difficulties that the state faces when it is confronted with chronic underdevelopment. You don't have enough electricity. There's insecurity in a country. How do you cope? Those were also learnings, traveling across the border and seeing the reality of intra-African or intra-West African logistics, because my experience of intra-East African logistics was very different. It's fairly smooth in East Africa, but in West Africa, observing intra-West African logistics is a real eye-opener. But if there's been a very significant influence on me, it will probably come from my exposure to living and working in Singapore. That would be just to see how that country transformed from third world to first with determination, with a willingness to be original, with the confidence to put Confucian values, which put the welfare of the society first. That's the thing that they pursue. I was exceedingly inspired by what the country has done for itself, something I continue to refer to in my engagements with many people.
All right, Mr. Nsarkoh, thank you so much for having us. It's been a huge pleasure talking to you and interacting with you. We appreciate all the tidbits that you gave us, and we would apply them definitely in our walks in life. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity and for sending me down memory lane. I probably don't have as interesting a campus life as you would like, because I was confined very much in the world in Katanga. But thank you for this opportunity, and I wish all of you well, and particularly the students who are on campus now. I wish them very well going forward.
Thank you, lovely viewers, for your time. We really appreciate it, and we hope to see you next time on Live School Series. Thank you.